So good afternoon, Adwait. Thank you so much
Good
for joining
afternoon.
in. A massive,
My pleasure, man.
a big congratulations on the 715. It is a
Thank you.
99th percentile score, just one shot. And looking at this brilliant score report, and obviously something happened around quant section. You've got an 81 percentile there.
Yeah,
Verbal is impressive 99 percentile, and data insight as well an impressive 99 percentile.
yeah,
So, what went, what were you most surprised and what were you most shocked about the score?
yeah. First and foremost, thanks for having me and thanks for the wishes. The biggest surprise actually was both verbal and quants,
Uh-huh.
just in terms of the very high percentile in verbal and not the greatest of percentiles for quant. Um, because I mean, traditionally, I consider myself to be strong in quants and relatively stronger in quants rather than in one verbal. But then I think something clicked on the exam for verbal really, really well. And obviously the techniques that Sandeep taught during his classes, I think that was that worked really, really well for me. In terms of quants, I think um, what I think kind of worked negatively for me was I think a couple of questions where you're solving the question and I think just in the moment you mark the wrong option even though you got the right option, but then, as we all know, GMAT really, really punishes you for these errors. But then overall, I'm kind of satisfied with the score, so
Was
I
that
think
was
can't
that
complain much.
was those errors in the first 14 questions? Do you think when you did you see that?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that is even more brutal than, making mistakes
exactly.
the second.
And funny enough, I went back and corrected, but I think the damage was already done and you kind of realize during the exam that it's a mistake because the next question comes, it's a very, very easy question. And I think that's a hint, that,
You made
okay, the previous question must have gone wrong. Yeah,
right. So, very quickly, I just want to let's get back to this exam section again in detail in another
sure,
segment,
sure.
this interview. But I would like to just, tell us more about yourself. What are you currently doing? How did this entire MBA journey spiral up through, and how did you find top 1% in Sandeep Gupta?
Yeah, sure. So, to tell a bit about myself, I'm a chartered accountant by profession, currently working at Gupshup in their CEO's office role. Before this, I was working at a boutique PE firm. Um, and obviously, I also pursued my articleship from Deloitte in audit. So, all in all, my journey really has been, finding out ways in which I can understand businesses a bit more in depth. First with stat audit, then with private equity and investing, and then more into the CEO's office and operations side of role at a company. This liking for business is what kind of made me a bit curious to explore the MBA route because I've been having the experience of dealing into businesses, but I also wanted to see on understand businesses more from an academic point of view. And obviously, I'm really enamored by what an MBA also will, give post completion and the kick it will give in my career down the line, right? So that's where I come from an MBA standpoint. In terms of top 1%, I think I found it out through a couple of my friends who I'm not sure if they have been students, but I found out about the demo and I took a demo. I saw some of the questions in the demo that you are supposed to solve a few questions in the demo, and then you have a demo class where Sandeep explains the questions. I think I remember there were around 10 questions, and I got one of them right, which was a huge shocker for me. And obviously, during the explanations, there were quite a few insights that I could take from the explanation itself. Oh, okay, this is how you solve the question. This is also my thought process then was okay, in a demo session, you had, if I could get some insights, I think it's the best place to study for my GMAT because honestly, I've been a believer in self-study, but given the obvious lack of time and given how the GMAT exam is structured, I thought I would really benefit from someone tutoring me about the techniques, and I'm happy I made the right call in that.
Right. So, when you started off, did you take up the self-paced course or the live online classes?
So I taken up the self-paced course.
Right. So, was there any decision? Was there any kind of a restriction in terms of your work? Did you choose self-paced over live? Give us a little idea about that. And how did
Yeah.
you start off with the preparation? How did you find the study plan, the entire videos? How was it aligned to what your preparation model was? as well.
Yeah.
And any particular section that stood out the most, or the way teaching style stood out the most for you?
Yeah. No, I think just to answer your first question in terms of self-paced and live, I think given how the job both in private equity and in the shop, it's a bit unstructured, right? So you don't really have a start and an end time to the day.
Right.
So I thought that, and I would consider myself fairly disciplined. When I have time, I would put in the efforts to study. So I think in that sense, the self-paced course really worked best for me because I didn't have a strict schedule in terms of work where I could fit in the time. So I think that was on the self-paced. In terms of the study plan, I think that Excel that Sandeep shares in terms of you need to complete this as a pre-work and then attend the class and then the post-work. I think that is absolutely phenomenal because you come prepared into the class, and what happens in the class, there's additional context. So it's not just you're coming in at zero, you're coming in at maybe 30, 40, jump to 70, 80. I think that's a really, really good thing. You have additional context, you already know what Sandeep is teaching, and then there's just further additions onto your understanding as well. So I think that study plan was really, really helpful, and that's how I followed, including the sequence as well. So you had quants and then verbal, so on and so forth. So that's how I really followed it. In terms of teaching style, what really stood out the most for me was definitely the verbal section, right? In terms of just RC and how octave approach really, really works. Even in CR, how what's the logic behind attempting a question. And I really put that logic, I imbibed that logic into me. And every question I used to solve, I used to go with that logic. Okay, this is how I do it. This is how you approach it. If it's a strengthened question, this is what you look for. If it's an assumption question, this is what you look for. I think verbal was the biggest game changer for me in terms of the teaching techniques. Yeah.
One of the things that I think I often like to ask CA, because you're looking at numbers and finance and math quite
Yeah.
often, and you
Yeah.
have the formula to all of this. I look at
Yeah.
verbal, and Sandeep sir throws in this mathematical approach towards looking at the question.
Yeah.
That causes a big mindset shift also, that and such a big relieving factor that, hey, you can
Yeah.
look at verbals so mathematically as well. So how
Exactly.
did that kind of change for you? Where did it started to show that this is a possibility? A 99 percentile is not something that I, at least in the just a half an hour back, I taken another student who got a same 715 score, but his
Right.
percentile was way lesser in terms of verbal.
Right.
And you don't see 99 percentile that often. So how did that became possibility? Where did it start from?
Yeah.
And what was your initial starting to a 99 percentile is what I would ask.
Yeah. No, I think absolutely great question. So initially to start with, I think in general, I have had the habit of reading.
Mm.
So reading does not, come across as an intimidating factor for me. So if I see a passage or if I see, you know, passages with convoluted sentences or long passages, it's not something I get intimidated by very easily. So I think that was the base I started with.
Right.
And obviously, right, the whole framework to how you approach a question from Sandeep. And just the primary passage, how you find an opinion, oh, where this is a contradictory verb, oh, then, all other questions that put your finger on it is something I can still visibly see in front of my eyes on that PDF. And that's exactly how I used to do it. So that's something that's really, really helped me. And obviously, the framework. So um, and the best part was, I think, the start itself was with very, very tough questions, right? So when you start with tough questions, when you solve, irrespective of how much time it takes initially, if you're getting it right, that builds your confidence going ahead, and obviously that then helped me. I use that confidence to practice more and more RC questions. In terms of CR, again, the same thing, right? So in terms of the approach on how to solve the question, I remember in the boldface section of the CR PDF, there was one paragraph which was written, it was written that 90% of CR questions, can be solved through understanding the argument code.
Right.
And once I applied that, then I realized the benefit of it. So the whole idea was, I think it was a self-fulfilling prophecy of sorts, right? You apply that, you get your answers right to tricky questions. That gives you confidence. You again apply,
Right.
and so on and so forth. That builds the confidence. So that's exactly how I used to do it. Okay, I understand what's the premise, what's the argument, what's the conclusion, and obviously after you solve a lot of questions, that becomes second nature. And that's how I used to structure it. So as you mentioned, right, mathematical approach, I think that works best for verbal. It sounds a bit counterintuitive because verbal is just language and there's no math involved. But having a framework is by far the most short way to get a very good score, I would say.
Yeah.
100%.
So, what you've touched base is very important is that self-realize. Like if you
Yeah,
mindlessly keep practicing, okay, someone says
yeah,
that I've done 500 questions and you mindlessly keep doing those questions, it just doesn't mean anything. You do 500
yeah,
or 5,000. That self-realization, sometimes what we give a framework for you to kind of make that progress is through the error log. So did you
yeah,
use those error log or did you have any other way to kind of utilize to make sure that the confidence is going higher to see that
yeah.
to capture that measure.
Absolutely. So I use two sources for this. First is obviously the error log where, and that's really, really helpful. So in the error log, I kind of tweaked it a bit. I obviously used all the columns that are already there. I added a couple of more columns saying, hey, is this, what's the level of, what is the level of the question? Is it hard, medium, easy,
Right.
color coding it? And,
Right.
even getting to the point of whether I got it right by fluke or not. And that helped me, give patterns where I was going wrong. So in CR, I remember I was going wrong on a lot of evaluate
Right.
questions.
Right.
So I, go back, I solve those, and it's again, it's a very personal strategy that way. But I really, really prefer to, jump right into the tricky questions.
Yeah.
Initially, it might take time. It may be a bit discouraging, but I think that pain is really, really necessary.
Yeah.
And obviously, whenever I felt a bit, complacent, I used to feel a bit complacent. I used to log into the mock portal. But I think, oh, that's an absolute gold mine according to me. The long settings, the type of questions, all questions are tough. The mock portal, thankfully, is not adaptive. It has all tough questions, and there, you see your accuracy 70-75%. You think, okay, I still have to do some tweaks in the preparation. So it's all about getting confidence, but also having at the back of the mind, you realizing, okay, there's something more that I need to do to get
Adwait,
it right.
you have really touched base on another most important part of the preparation, which is challenging yourself. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people want to just be sitting in the easier question, give me some 500, 600 level.
yeah,
That just does not help you to prepare for this kind of a score. If you
yeah,
don't challenge yourself to take more trickier question, if something is easier, then you have to go back and see, okay, give me some challenge, give me
yeah,
some tricky questions. Because I think if you to look at a curve, right, how Sandeep sir puts you, if this is a mountain, he puts you at the very peak of the mountain right from the beginning.
yeah,
Struggle happens at the beginning, not in the end.
exactly.
Imagine you coming back again to doing the
Yeah,
basics when you are in the practice phase. That's more
yeah,
disastrous. But that's a
yeah,
great summary, I would say, that, especially with your preparation. Now,
yeah,
tell us about this one thing that happened in the exam. You said quant was fairly easier, and
yeah.
what happened in the exam and what happened during the preparation? Did something happen? Was it only exam day something turned out, or in the
Yeah,
preparation, if you look back, was there some kind of a miss, or did you hit it
yeah.
all?
No, preparation, I would say, okay, so I don't know if you know this, but this was my second attempt. The previous attempt, I did feel that I was lacking a bit of preparation in quants, where I made really, really silly mistakes, and that was down to lack of practice, and that's something I really, really fixed this time. I think I completed almost all questions of 700, 800 series. I was getting, my accuracy was building up, so on. I think it just happened at that moment, in the, and the worst part is, you got the answer, but somehow in your mind it just triggered that, okay, so how I would put it this way: there was a question, I chose the other option and tried to figure out, okay, and then I realized, okay, the other option is wrong, but somehow I went and selected the other option.
The wrong
So
option.
it's, yeah, and I have a feeling, I think there are some things that you just cannot, I mean, if it happens, it just happens, right? So there was that one question which happened like that. And I think that brought down my score. And I think it was question number 9, 10 or something. So
Right.
that's even worse.
Worse,
So,
right? Yeah.
yeah, so that was a challenge. But
This happened only in the exam day, right? In
yeah,
while you were
yeah.
preparing and while you were taking up these mock from the portal, did you see
Mhm.
something similar happening like that on the test day?
Initially, it was happening. When I was practicing, obviously, you have 2 minutes, you have the time pressure and all of that. That happened. But over time, I kind of just got attuned to it. And I was making relatively less mistakes in the first 14 questions. More often in the first 14, it's zero mistakes and so on. But yeah, I think that one question on the exam day, and GMAT can really, really punish you. So, I mean, that's just the beauty or the curse of the exam, so to speak. That's
Right.
where it really messes up.
Since we're already speaking of what happened in the exam day, so what was the order of the section that
Mhm.
you chose, and did
Yeah,
you choose that by like had you always had that in mind, and did you do those mocks also in the
yeah,
same order, or was it in the exam day that you decided this should be the order and why?
yeah. No, I actually had the order decided in mind, and I practiced all my mocks in that order. So I had verbal, quants, and then DI. For the simple reason that again, it's very personal to me. The first section, if it is verbal, I go in with a fresh mind. I can read each and every word very, very carefully. And then quants, you shift from words to quants, and it does not require a huge mental shift for you. And then obviously moving on to DI, which is a combination. I used to take a break after the first two sessions were done. So that is the order I went. That is my logic. Again, it's very personal to me, and that's how I practiced all my mocks as well.
Right. Now, something that I would just ask, otherwise, and most likely I'd like to hear this from you as well.
Yeah,
You are a working professional as well.
yeah,
And especially being in the position that you are, you said it's unstructured in terms of the time.
mhm,
Work can be demanding. How
yeah,
did you manage time? How did you keep yourself motivated? More importantly, how did you even, structure the mocks? If your exam
yeah,
is when did you start taking the mocks and when did you
yeah,
time the mocks? Just give a little experience about how was every day looking like for you, given that
yeah,
you're also working.
yeah. No, I think very good question, and I think to some extent my CA background really helped me because apart from everything else, CA really taught me in terms of discipline and the habit of sitting down and studying. GMAT doesn't require the level of sitting down and studying that a CA did, but that was the habit that I developed, and I think I was just really, really what motivated me was, I had attended a webinar of Sandeep's in April on HBS, and
Right,
that was where he said that, if you get a 99 percentile or above, it is most likely than not that, GMAT would not be the reason for a college to reject you. There can be 10 other factors. So that was my motivation that, okay, GMAT, among other things that the college looks at, GMAT is the one thing that I can really control the most. There are
right,
other things that are not in my control. So I wanted to really, really get the best score possible. That was my motivation. So that motivation is something that was really driving my preparation. I wanted more accuracy, more marks, and so on. In terms of discipline, in terms of the structure, I used to keep studying wherever there is free time. Um, so I used to uh, block times around 1.5, 2 hours in the morning and an hour in the night, where I used to,
yeah,
just try to put 3 hours in the weekdays, and obviously weekends would generally, I would use the time to study. Initially, I obviously started off, on an untimed basis for all sections, but after for each chapter in verbal or quants, after the first two practices, I started to time them,
right,
and yeah, I think that was around 1.5 months before the exam. And I think 3 weeks before the exam is when I started to give mocks. So on the weekend morning, I used to give a mock, get done with it by around 10:30, 11. Spend till lunchtime. I used to review, okay, what chapters do I need to brush up on quickly, spend an hour brushing up. Then evening again, I used to give another mock. So weekend, I used to spend time on just giving the mocks. That was around 3 weeks before.
right,
Um, yeah. And in the last week, I think 3, 4 days before I stopped giving mocks,
right.
because then I didn't want that. I wanted to just, practice more and more questions, because then I was able to figure out that, okay, I'm getting a fairly decent score. I'm able to manage my time better. Now it's all about practicing and, having those concepts in mind.
You're right. So, very good points that you mentioned that you don't want to exhaust yourself,
Yeah,
especially, and mocks are going to give you a gauge of what your score would be like based on your preparation. If your practice isn't
yeah,
good enough, then focus on that than taking too many mocks. Um,
exactly.
and anything I want to ask this because again, I'm asking this because your job is definitely demanding, what you
Yeah,
study. Uh, was there any time that you had to take break and then come back and study, or were you absolutely consistent to this?
yeah,
And if you were consistent, what really motivated you to stay consistent being a self-paced course student? This is one of the things that
yeah.
very important because we drive a lot of forces from our side, showing you testimonials, asking you to come and attend Sandeep's session. But there's
Yeah,
something personally what you have done that is more
yeah. No, I think for me, I think the biggest benefit is at least I know what my strengths are in terms of how I'm able to study, and this is I figured this out long back when I was appearing for CA and other exams as well. I'm not someone who can sprint in the last week and get good marks. That's just not me. I cannot put 18 hours, 19 hours in terms of studying. I would rather put concerted 7, 8, 10 hours, but spread it every day over the last 2 months. So
right.
that is just me being aware of myself.
That's very
That's yeah, so that's actually what's helped me. So I know that if I want to get a good score, I need to put in the hours.
right.
And I know for a fact that I cannot put in, that's just not possible for me. And, 18, 19 hours is something that I definitely could not do. So I decided, okay, 2 months I have, let me just be very consistent. So I used to, find time here and there. Obviously, there's been a lot of sacrifices in terms of, going out or, relaxing.
True.
But obviously, when you have a goal, I think those are definitely worth it.
And
So, but yeah,
what you've highlighted is extremely important, to identify and to be aware of yourself too, because then
yeah,
sometimes a lot of people say, "What should I do?" But then, we can only say so much.
yeah,
But it's a great realization, and something that you've really bought in. Now, on the exam day, there are two things that I would like to
mhm,
ask. Was it,
yeah.
did you run out of time on the exam day for any of the sections? And did you find any questions that seemed completely out of box, or were you
Yeah.
fairly familiar with all the questions that was there?
Yeah. No, I did not. Thankfully, I did not run out of time during the exam. I was able to, solve all questions to the best of my abilities. And I don't think there were any questions as such. There were any questions that I can recollect which were completely out of the box. They were definitely tricky and probably would have, with a different approach, I probably would have been able to solve, but nothing as such that, oh, I've not just not seen such type of a question. That has so there were no surprises on the exam day, thankfully.
Right. So good to hear that. Now, when you saw that score flash in 715, you did have a mixed emotion of the quant and verbal, but you obviously couldn't
Yeah,
process because it's so short. But what is the next thing that you did? Did you apply to the schools? Did you have some
mhm,
schools in mind, or are you still, you have to give
yeah,
some thought to that?
yeah. So no, I mean when I saw this when I saw the score first, I was very happy, and then obviously there was a bit of it at the back of my mind that, oh man, if I had actually got that question right in the first instance, maybe this would have been a 100
100%
percentile
right.
score and
Exactly.
the quant score would have been definitely better. But then, I mean, no point crying over spilled milk. But yeah, decided to be really happy about the score that I got. In
Optimism.
terms of schools, I mean, I've not yet narrowed down on what school I wanted to go into. But then, obviously, since you have the um, 5 schools that you can choose to send your score to, I chose 5 of the M7s. I chose Harvard, I chose Stanford MBA, Wharton, Chicago Booth, and Columbia. Yeah,
Perfect.
these are the
Perfect.
five.
That
Yeah.
just That's just wonderful. I'll just probably talk to you about that in a second. Now, if you have to summarize the entire GMAT experience in
Mhm.
what, if was for someone who's starting out now, right? What
Yeah.
are the things that you would say that you have to do, like maybe one thing or more, many in a list, and the things that shouldn't do, like don'ts, do's
Yeah.
and don'ts.
Yeah. So I think this is something I realized during the journey. The first thing is, GMAT is very unlike a lot of, and again, I'm speaking from Indian students' experience, but GMAT is very unlike a lot of the courses that we have done, right? Where I think the ratio is 70-30, 70 being the coursework that you need to memorize and learn by heart, and 30 is about those exam challenges, time management, and so on. In GMAT, it's the other way around. 70% is just managing, how you attempt the questions, how you approach the questions, which questions you can go wrong and which you cannot. And 30% is just in terms of the concepts. There are concepts to learn, but it is not a lot.
Yes,
So yeah, in terms, if you were to give just 1 week of dedicated efforts throughout, I think all your concepts would be covered. It's
beautiful.
not more than that. So I think that mindset shift is very, very important when you are attempting a GMAT, because it's not just about getting the accuracy right. You have to pick and choose what questions you can go wrong as well. right? If you go wrong on a tougher question, it's still fine, but you can definitely not go wrong on an easy question, and you can definitely not go wrong on the first 14 questions, as I painfully found out. And so that is one fair bit of advice that I would give. Other than that, I think one other thing that you should not definitely not do is, take long breaks between the last time you studied, because I think the flow is very, very important, because accuracy, I believe, comes from consistency. You cannot have, timed accuracy if you're not consistent. I did something today, I got 100% accuracy, and then I pick it up 3 weeks down the line. It's almost as good as starting from scratch. So I think personally, if you would ask me, choose the exam date so in such a way that you have 2 months of consistent time to actually study for GMAT, and yeah, definitely give a lot of mocks and time yourself. I think that Sandeep has harped, and in his lectures has harped a lot. Build that habit of timing yourself and stopping when the time is up. So I used to have the stopwatch on my phone, and
Right.
when it used to go down, I made it a point to stop. It's very painful, as he rightly points out, but then I think that's the only way you can, improve, because I don't think the questions as such are difficult or unsolvable. It's just that you need to solve it within the time limit. That is what is the trickiest part. So knowing that and doing that is something that is very, very important.
Correct. Something that I really admire what you said was, and if I have to simply put it together, the 70-30% bit.
Yeah,
It's that, even if you are very poor in quant or poor in verbal, this is the exam that you should fear the most.
yeah,
You could still go for it, but given that you make sure that the 70% of effort, which is managing in time and,
yeah.
accuracy, that you get right, the concept will be done. That's well put there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as I mentioned at the start, right? Because my quants in general arithmetic is, I mean, I would say definitely much better than my verbal score, and my final score is for all to see, right? So it's
Right.
nothing is,
Yeah,
impossible or
you
not
cannot
get
say this is
difficult.
what you're good at and you'll get like a high score, or this is what
Exactly.
you're bad at and you'll get a poor
Definitely not.
score. There's no such thing at
Definitely
all
not.
in GMAT.
Can't
So
see.
thank you so much for sharing all of these pointers
My
and
pleasure.
insights. Really, really crystal clear. I'm very happy that you got the score. Very happy that you chose us to be a part of, your journey. Because sir is taking a class right now, and I take this opportunity to congratulate you on behalf of him and the entire team. We really celebrated, and you're definitely going to inspire. So some of us, you've come through some of your friends who've said about top 1%, and this is the month, because we've been existing for the last 15 years, and
Yeah.
more so people are referring. If you do get a chance, do refer, and we'd obviously like to contribute back to you, right?
Why not?
Because then you are definitely an inspiration. You have the score. And one
Yeah.
more thing about, I genuinely wish one of the admits happened to you, M7, because we've obviously gotten so many students into it, but even me personally experiencing one of the top M7 school in even 1 week has been so transformational. I cannot imagine how 2 years could be. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and there's so much to learn, and I'm sure what you are aiming for, it will exceed your expectation being in those schools. And that's one of the reason why we say, there is a difference in Indian schools and the schools, the top M7 schools.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I wish that happens for you very soon in the next 5-6 months of
Yeah.
admission and admits coming through. We'll stay
Yeah,
connected, and if you'd like
definitely.
know more of any other information about the schools, I can speak about it, or probably I can help you get in touch with our admission team as well, or three as well, right?
Yeah,
So if you haven't still connected, we'll help you get connected. Thank you.
definitely.
Is there anything else as a parting note you'd like to share?
No, and I mean, thanks for, I think, just thanks to Top 1% and Sandeep, right? Just in terms of the teaching, the help, I think it's been really, really great. I have obviously been undoubtedly referring Top 1% to, whoever has reached out to me for kickstarting their GMAT prep. But yes, I think it is not something that I could do without the techniques and what Sandeep sir has taught. So no, I mean, just heartfelt gratitude to the entire team for helping me achieve this goal. No,
You're
absolutely.
extremely
Thank you
kind
so
in
much.
saying that. Super humble. Thank you again. Thanks for joining me this
Thank you.
afternoon. You have a lovely day ahead. Bye bye. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye.